Welcome back to the Change the Culture podcast, a podcast dedicated to preventing and reducing interpersonal violence through empowerment self-defense. I'm your host, Annie Orenstein, and the producer of My Power Casts. We are here to educate on the importance of empowerment self-defense, ESD, so that we could prevent and reduce interpersonal violence in our communities and around the world. In the Change the Culture podcast, you will hear and learn from founders and professionals of around the world in the field of ESD. My Power is a social tech startup dedicated to reducing and preventing interpersonal violence through technology, education, and community. And the My Power app is now in its beta phase and is a powerful tool to soon be in the hands of millions of people worldwide, preventing violence and saving lives. In this episode, we are kicking off the season 2 of Change the Culture podcast. So let's get started. And today on the show is Antonella Spatola from Brisbane, Australia. Antonella Spatola is the founder and instructor of ESD Australia and Wisdom for Women based in Brisbane. Holding a BA in psychology, she is a coach and professional mediator in conflict resolution. Antonella is also a behavioral therapist teaching ESD and life skills to young adults who are neurodiverse by using personal profiling and transformational personal development. She recently received her ESDP from the Association of ESD Professionals. Antonella initiated ESD in the Asia Pacific region as the regional manager for ESD Global Incorporated. She supports other ESD instructors in this region to promote their work with their communities, delivering training and promoting ESD to the global community as firsthand preventative methods against violence. She speaks 3 languages and has worked intensively with the vision impaired community. So Antonella, thank you for being our first guest on the 2nd season of Change the Culture podcast. Welcome.
Thanks, Annie, and congrats on season 2.
Thank you so much. So excited to be here. And please feel free to share a bit about yourself and your journey to discovering empowerment self-defense.
Yeah, sure. So a little bit about myself. I'm Antonella. As Annie said, I'm based in sunny Brisbane in Australia, but I actually was born in Germany and my heritage is Sicilian. And when I was 8 years old, I came with my family and immigrated to Australia. I have lived in Denmark for 3 years, but Brisbane is home. I have 2 teenage, well, no, I shouldn't say that. They're young adults, 18 and 20 years old, daughters, and I live with my partner and our 17 chickens. Yeah, so a little bit about how I got into ESD. I didn't even know it was called ESD. I started martial arts training when I was 18. I always had a fascination and of course was surrounded by males, and many times I was the only female in the class. And for many martial artists, they would know that they get trained to go from 0 to 100. And it's at the same time as I started my Wing Chun Kung Fu training, I also started my psychology degree. So it was even back in 1996 that I started to amalgamate both martial arts and psychology, and always had this fascination with personal development. So, being sort of the only female in the class, you were always sort of like, not ostracized, but you stood out from doing things slightly different from everybody else, because generally speaking, women are more nurturing, and they sort of, they were softer in the way they teach. So later in 2018, when ESD Global reached out to invite me to their boot camp in New York, that's when I realized that all those years, for the last 20 years, I was actually teaching ESD. And, I'm a big believer in trusting your intuition and just doing what was and is right for you. So I was teaching slightly different from all my male instructors, but looking back now, it's exactly what needed to happen. So that's how I got introduced to the official ESD training. And of course, now we're part of a global network thanks to ESD Global. And, the rest is history.
Incredible. So like the other people I've interviewed on Change the Culture podcast. You've traveled the world to teach empowerment self-defense through the universal principles of think, yell, run, fight, and tell. And you've had many students, met with people around the world. What is the other name you use for ESD?
I use the words empowerment through self-discovery. As you read out, I have this fascination with human behavior, mental models, just the psyche. And I also sort of work on the spectrum of neuropsychology all the way to what people will call spiritual work, etheric work. Play with numerology, a bit of astrology. I'm not an expert in it, but I have noticed that the whole spectrum from the science all the way to the ethereal is very, very well connected. And in fact, more research is showing that it's all the same. So that's part of how I also teach the ESD, through self-discovering who you are, why you think and feel and behave the way that you do based on your psychology and other areas that a lot of people are starting to show interest in, but it's a little bit shy. There's this whole curiosity around, what's numerology, and what do my stars say, which is, it's horses for courses. So some people love that stuff, some people are not really into it. So when I do coaching, I sort of ask them, what are you into? And then I just stick to what their interests are. I use the Enneagram as well.
Right.
I've been trained in Enneagram and I love the Enneagram. So that plays heavily in the way I coach and teach as well, because the individual, we all love talking about ourselves, and the coaching is really successful in terms of the individual learning about themselves through self-discovery. And that just plays in beautifully with the empowerment through self-defense. It just goes hand in hand.
That's beautiful. I also see that with my own work. When I work with other women, we talk about discover, develop, and define who you are. And the self-discovery is an important theme to understand who we are in relationship to the world. And the more we ask ourselves these questions, the more we understand how to relate to the world better and others. But first and foremost is what we want, what's inside of us. And you can, with your history in self-defense training, on your site, you talk about the difference between empowerment self-defense training and other forms of self-defense. So maybe you could explore and share with us a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, well, I guess we in the ESD community, we use the word holistic. So it's a holistic approach. So it's using different modalities to get to a space where you can defend yourself. And because I focus on the Asia Pacific region, of course, without saying, every country, every community has their own issues. And I always use the example that the women in Brisbane, the women in Australia, deal with a different type of abuse and violence than women in Pakistan experience. So we need to redefine and let the individual decide, what is abusive for them. So just the whole concept of self-defense is very new for women across Asia Pacific. Of course, in Australia, when I talk about self-defense, everybody automatically goes to the worst case scenario. They all think about physical, defending yourself physically, which is part of ESD. But I find that defending against manipulation, tyrannical behavior, malevolent behavior, all, bullying, people that are mean, people that tease, people that gossip, the stuff that is soft abuse, speak, that happens to us on a daily basis. So, it's really important to define that. Once we feel uncomfortable, stressed, we just start feeling a little bit like just not good, we need to recognize what that is and break it down. And I always say that therapy is a privilege, like getting counseling and therapy is a privilege. Not everyone has access to this. And that's why I really advocate for the women to go and listen to podcasts and listen to their favorite, what I call modern philosophers. One of Byron Katie, she's someone that I used to listen to a lot to help me through my mindset, how I change my perspective. So, if you're not going to have your own therapist and counselor or an ESD instructor at hand, if you have the opportunity to use Google, go and Google and go on YouTube and podcasts like this one, and just get all that, knowledge and inspiration to support you, because it's not talked about. It's talked about, but not using the words ESD. I listen to males who talk about personal development, transforming the mindset, but they don't use the words ESD. They don't talk about when there's abuse and violence. They don't use those words. So, the antidote to responding to abuse and violence, it's available out there. You just need to open, your definition of what you think ESD is, and broaden your mindset into that. There's advice in regards to how you deal with people that make you feel uncomfortable or breach your boundaries. So it's
absolutely it's part of our newsletter. Our My Power newsletter is called What's Going On Here. So first and foremost, when we ask the question, what's going on here in a situation, that's not a physical response situation. It's not something that we have to use necessarily physical self-defense, but it's something where we're using our thought process to assess if we're in a safe space right now, if we feel comfortable, and having the ability to ask that question is very empowering, right? And the world is all about empowerment, and we want to bridge that and make sure that the right empowerment gets into the hands to prevent physical violence and also interpersonal violence. So, and now, Antonella, maybe you can share with our listeners about ESD in Australia and Wisdom for Women. When did that start?
Goodness. So I guess, as I said, I've been teaching for over 20 years, the Wing Chun Kung Fu, so the martial arts. But within that, I was also, I put myself through a lot of personal development training. I spent a lot of money on that kind of coaching, and now I get to teach it myself. So, I've been using it. It's who I am. Like, I'm the person, I'm the friend that people call for advice. I'm the voice of reason. My girls call me up and ask for advice, that we have a really strong relationship. So it's just my nature. I've done a lot of work on myself. I know who I am. So it's just, that's Antonella, so I've been doing it my whole life. It's just who I am. So I've been doing ESD, as I said, for over 20 years. But in 2018, when I found the tribe, I was able to put words to what I was teaching, more specific global words that we all use now when we are in the ESD space. And culturally, it's very different. You heard me say that I lived in Denmark for 3 years, so I got to experience the Scandinavian culture, which is very different. I know the German culture. I've lived there since I was 8, and Sicilian culture. So, and I used to travel nearly every year to Hong Kong for my Kung Fu training. So, I've been exposed, and I love traveling. I've been exposed to many cultures. I assimilate really well. I understand the nuances. So, and I had the honor to teach last May in Bangkok with ESD Global, 16 women from 14 different Asia Pacific countries. And
Wow.
at the end of the day, it's like the analogy of an onion. Like, you got the outside layers, right? What we like to wear, what perfume we use, what kind of food we like to eat, and then a little bit as you peel back those layers, what kind of a background or upbringing we've had, our skill sets and our strengths and our weaknesses. And what I have found, Annie, over the years, doesn't matter where I go, the core is the same for women. It is the same. It doesn't change. And that is that
Right.
women, even the most confident woman on the stage, she still walks off that stage and she still has self-doubt. That's something that women are still experiencing. And I think we need to define a little bit more and be clear clear on expectations that we put on ourselves. One of the things is to limit our social media exposure. That's another podcast. So, what women experience in Australia is different from what women experience in Papua New Guinea. But at the end of the day, the core issue is that we are still on a journey where we need to find our self-worth, not only on like through intimate relationships, but then as we experience our professional relationships, our
Absolutely.
with friends and strangers. And again, I always bring it back to self-discovery. Who are you in all of those spaces? And how can we get the theme of ESD, the being empowered to be able to defend the self? How do we get to make that really solid and confident and speak for us in every single role that we play? And yeah, that's a very new concept for a lot of women.
Well,
So
it's so interesting because I think that you're actually a testament to how amazing empowerment self-defense is as a tool, a universal tool for everyone around the world. Meaning, obviously, you mentioned each country has their own culture, and we can't come in and impose a specific culture on anybody. We have to come in and with respect. But if we peel away the layers, we understand that there's a gem inside each and every one of us, and that needs to be protected. And each and every woman and man that learns a language of empowerment self-defense can protect their own core, and has the right to. And it's a testament to the universality of think, yell, run, fight, and tell, and what we're bringing to the world, and how the power of prevention, preventing this interpersonal violence. So let's move along. I'm so excited that you're here with us. We wanted to talk today about how to set personal boundaries and the importance of why it's so important to set personal boundaries. And maybe we can just start with, what are these boundaries and what are healthy boundaries? What does everybody need to know when it comes to setting boundaries universally?
Yeah, the word empowerment looks and feels different for every woman. What I see as being empowered and strong is very different from what another woman in Bangladesh or India would experience. And it's like, like I'm a mom, and so, you see your kids sort of like going through a rough patch, and you use the philosophy of they just need to go through it. Then it's on their journey. You can't rescue them, otherwise they don't learn that lesson. And that's one of the things that I see in the trainings, especially the trainings that ESD Global provides, a 7-day immersive training, that you need to let the student go through that training in her own time, because she will get that aha moment.
Right.
And it's becomes really powerful. And I'm really conscious of, I'm at the front facilitating. I'm older than them. I have a lot of life experience. I have done martial arts, which tends to give you another level of confidence as well. But again, not everyone wants to do martial arts, and hence why I advocate for ESD instead now. But it's role modeling something that they look at and go, I want some of that. And we need to remember that as ESD instructors, I mean, we still have our issues. Don't get me wrong. Like, my boundaries change. All our boundaries change. They depending on who we are with, depending on how we're feeling, depending if we feel like setting that boundary sometimes is like just whatever, it's not worth it. And hence why I also love ESD, that we can't make a judgment and we don't victim blame. And it's not up to us to look at that person and say, well, you should have done this. That's something that I love about ESD. Well, but the whole thing about boundaries is that we talk a lot about it, but we really need to start again looking within ourselves. So I say, the typical, for those of you that are watching the podcast, you can see that my hands are up. For those of you listening, hands are up in front of me, fingers pointing up to the ceiling, palms are showing, right? So
got it.
That is a clear in ESD boundary. It's universal. If you don't put any words to it, you can say, yep, that means stop, back off, leave me alone. No. But I'm going to turn my hands around and face those palms towards me and go, what am I allowing into my life? So where are my boundaries within? Where am I saying yes to things that I really want to say no to? So it's easy, there is a big aspect, and I'm sure that other ESD instructors will talk about this. I'm going to just talk a little bit of it on a different slant, just another perspective. So we talk about keeping, people out and making it very clear where your boundary are. But I'm going to share a little bit about what happens when we turn our palms towards us and what are we allowing in. So it's again just taking that time of asking ourselves,
interesting.
Yeah, where are we breaching our own boundaries? And it is a conversation that we need to have. And it's part of our fifth principle, which is tell. So we have that discussion where we consciously will bring to the forefront of our mind, where am I breaching my own boundaries? Well, it could be, I'm putting I need to exercise, like we all need to exercise, but I don't make time for myself. Right. Now, that's simple and it sounds trivial. And again, I'll put another spin to it. It sounds trivial, that if we make time for exercise, that's a yes to something that we want. Now, if we do that for ourselves, it becomes easier to say yes to other things that we want. It could be, it could be choosing to work shifts that work better for me instead of other people. So the more we ask ourselves, what do I want? It's that muscle that makes it easier to explain to others when you need to set a boundary with everyone else. I use this model. It's me, myself, and I. And then it's us, your intimate, like your partner, your children. Then it's them. So it could be your siblings, your mum and dad, your friends, close friends, and then everyone else. So we have boundaries on all different levels, but we need to start with the boundary with ourselves.
That's incredible, because also, my husband has this line: when we say no to something, we're saying yes to something else, right? There's a line like that. And when we know how to tell ourselves no to something, like if I want to eat the cake or the candy, or I'm building my own self-worth. Like I'm saying, well, I don't need that. And when we're able to say no to ourselves, we're able to also reflect out that we're worth what our worth to other people as well. That's amazing. And can you tell us more, Antonella, also about the aha moments with your students and the win-wins and, your success story?
Yeah, an aha moment, I hear this a lot, is when women come in and they look at me and they go, I didn't even know I needed this. They may have heard from a friend to come to the class. They may have known me and they know what I'm doing and that I'm doing this traveling and teaching, and they go, oh, I want to come to Antonella's class. Not really knowing what I do. They just wanted to be part of it, right? And then they go, oh my gosh, like,
Amazing.
wow, I didn't even know this. And one of the things, again, that I hear in Australia, so this could be relevant to other cultures, is young women say to me after they've had their training in how to set verbal boundaries, which is actually the hardest part of ESD I have found, how to set verbal boundaries. They say to me, Antonella, does this mean I now have to be, and is it okay? They say, they use the word, bitch. Does this mean I have to be a bitch now? It's like, no, we need more kind people in this world. We
Mm,
need to educate the world the difference between being assertive and aggressive,
right,
because many times when I have been assertive, I've been accused of being aggressive.
right,
And that's just another way of diminishing our strength and our power to be able to set healthy boundaries. And the
right.
world is not ready for that. It's like the world doesn't accept that. And that's what we're changing with ESD. We're teaching, right? And there's another little adage that we say, you may have heard this, we teach others how to treat us. So,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
yeah. So when we embrace that curiosity around, who am I and who do I want to be, and who do I need to be inspired by? Because the reality is that you're not going to go through an ESD workshop and you're going to change forever. This is about connecting the dots, getting inspired, staying connected with strong role models, learning. I do this all the time, like finding women, even men, finding individuals that inspire you, and you go, I want to do that. I'm going to practice that. And you're connecting the dots between what people have forgotten. That part of them is forgotten, that assertiveness side of them, because growing up, in my experience, speaking up was looked at as a bad thing. I come from a very strict Sicilian family, so speaking up was not looked at as a good thing. So I learned, I'm conflict averse. That's my nature. I still am. Nothing will ever change that. But I'm aware of that. So when, I get that feeling, it's like, oh, Antonella, yep, you're moving away now to keep yourself safe. What's going on? Like you say, what's going on?
Right, right.
What do I need to do here? Who do I need to be right now? What is my ideal self? What does she need to do? And just having that dialogue and just being aware is beautiful. It's not about unrealistic expectations that you're just going to change, and you're never going to need support, because the reality is I'm still working on being assertive. There are lots of things I'm not comfortable with, but I'm aware of it. And
Wow.
I tell, like I said, the fifth principle, I tell those people around me, this is my go-to when I feel stressed. This is my default. So when we are sitting around a table, and I do this when I work with new teams, or
Hmm.
when I have to work with my colleagues, I make sure that we go through the Enneagram together. And I say, when we're in a roundtable conversation for work and you don't hear me talk, that means I'm going into flight mode. So what I need you to do is say, hey, Antonella, I've noticed that you've been quiet. Is there anything that you want to say? We would really love to hear what you have to say. But so just having that
Wow.
conversation in that dynamic empowers and takes the responsibility is on everybody and yourself, 100%. I took my responsibility at the beginning of our team to make sure it's cohesive and that we get to decisions by using our strategic mindset as opposed to what I call our elephant, that rampages in our brain. So, it is women don't even realize that so much is going on unconsciously that ESD brings out, and now they're like, okay, now I know what Antonella said. What would she say in this case? The 5 principles. Got it.
So for our listeners who are just tuning in for the first time and don't know what the 5 principles are, so how do you give them out in one sentence? We have think, yell, run, fight, tell, right?
Correct.
So how do you explain it?
The word again, holistic. Our brain is our biggest weapon. So we think strategically. We want to start connecting our neurons, making new connections. That's the aha moment that I was talking about before. It is thinking outside the box. I always tell my students, especially the young ones, think outside the box. So that's thinking. The tell is, yes, absolutely using your voice. You can use your voice, still very assertively, but still very calm and in control, and choosing your words wisely, which does take practice. One of the things I say is, it's not 50 words, because I looked at 50 words and that's actually quite a lot of words, but I say if you need to respond to somebody and set a boundary, you only have, let's say, 15 words to choose from, no more.
Right.
15 words, because if you keep going on and on and on, you're just giving the other person more ammunition to twist your words, and then you are put on the back foot. So choose your words very carefully, be very literal, do not beat around the bush, and watch your tonality as well. So think, yell, run. Run is one of the funny things that you used to always say, it doesn't look very sexy running away. It's like, doesn't look very cool. But running away just means for me, it means to reset. So if you need to, and usually, again, not worst case scenarios to run away from the situation, but to reset, to get away, to let the brain go back to strategic mode, your prefrontal cortex. So you're not using your amygdala when you are in a situation where normally as a people pleaser, you say, yes, that's your first, yeah, sure, yeah, I'll do that. And then you're like, what did I just agree to? So again, what's going on? Let me just walk away and I'll come back with an answer in 5 minutes. So that's just running away. Fight, as we say in ESD, not because you want to, but knowing that you can. And that is very powerful. And everyone loves the fighting aspect of the classes. That it doesn't matter where you go, everyone wants to learn how to throw a punch and kick. And the tell is part of, that healing circle that we are celebrating around the world, where we are getting together to heal through storytelling, which our ancestors used to do in Australia, the Indigenous Aboriginals, many Indigenous cultures around the fire. Aunties and our great grandmothers, they used to sit around at dinner time, and we don't do that anymore. So, to reintroduce that concept of family time and really, taking away, limiting your exposure to social media, that you need to have face-to-face contact. So
it's a way to release. Wow, beautiful.
Yeah.
It's perfect. It's a way to release our stress of the day when we're with people that we love and people that we feel safe with, to let them know, what's going on, what's going on with us. And if we're connected too much online, we're not having that. We're replacing it, but there's nothing that replaces it, in a sense, the opportunity to tell. And also, so we're today talking about boundaries, and that's all in yell. And you talked about being intentional and the tonality. Even though we say yell, we're not saying no necessarily. We want to be confident, and we want to say something with conviction. but not necessarily yelling it out unless we need to, unless we fight. It's almost yelling is a form, I would say, pulling into a form of fighting in a sense, because the tonality gets to be at a level where you need to hear me in right now. But obviously, with our coming back to setting boundaries and as a little recap for what we discussed up until now is being able to set boundaries within ourselves, to protect what's inside of us, and maybe, Antonella, I'd love to hear, before we end off, change the culture, I'd love to hear something that you overcame personally, and how you had to use a boundary and how it helped you.
Oh, goodness. Great question, Annie. You know, my biggest things I still haven't overcome. It's a journey. You know, it's a series of little hills constantly. But yeah, my biggest, so there's a bit of an outpouring, which I don't do a lot of. I'm very personal, private person. But yeah, what am I overcoming? I can share something. I'm overcoming not trying to convince people who are not interested in listening. That is one of the things, with ESD Australia, Wisdom for Women, ESD Global, that we just have been working tirelessly all around the world, all our ESD instructors, all the people that are just changing, how we look at being able to assert ourselves. I'm overcoming trying to convince people that are just not interested in focusing on those that are wanting to listen and want to make a change. Because, when ESD is so personal to me that it's like, oh my God, can't you see that ESD is like the answer? Like, can you not see it? That's quite frustrating. And we experience that.
Right.
So yeah, that's probably something that I'm overcoming. Yeah, surely over time, and talking to the people that do want to listen and sort of wasting my time to those that don't want to listen. Yeah.
Well, there are a lot of people that need this in the world. So I bless you to continue getting your messages out there. And we are a sisterhood, and it's amazing the impact that you and other professionals in the ESD world are making. I'm honored to have you on the show, and it's just so special. If there's anything lastly that you'd like to add, that you haven't mentioned, and how people can get in touch with you, I'd love to share with our listeners.
Yeah, well, it's been so fun to share. Thank you. One of the things I probably would want to share or leave is that never underestimate the power that you have, and in terms of being a role model. So not only are we working on ourselves to become more stronger, more powerful, take our own power back. You don't have to be the CEO of a big organization. You don't have to have lots of money in the bank. You don't have to have all the nicest clothes in the wardrobe. You don't have to drive the nicest car. There are little girls, there are women, there are people out there that are seeking desperately for strong role models. And if we can be that for them, it's going to really change magnificently. And I always tell that to my students when they come to the classes, that if you want to be the change, it's got to start from you. So keep training your ESD every day, and make sure that you show your daughters, show your students in your classes, show everybody that ESD is something that you need to be proud of and demonstrate on a daily basis.
Beautiful. Amazing. Antonella, thank you. We are, as I mentioned before, My Power is launching. We're in the beta phase of launching our My Power app, which should be in the hands of millions of users around the world bringing 21 lessons of ESD. And how does that impact you? I'd love to hear how that makes a difference to you.
I am so excited. I know Udit has been working on this tirelessly with her team. So finally, the beta version has come out. I'm testing it when I get every chance that I get. And again, it's embracing technology in a positive way. It's just another aspect. We use our phones. It's always in front of us. So it's utilizing that technology to learn the ESD. And my understanding is that you're going to have access to somebody. I plan to be one of those people that if you want to talk to a real person, that somebody will be on the other side of the app. So I think it's the way to go, and I'm sharing it with as many people as possible. And I know everyone around the world is doing the same. And it's a breakthrough in technology in terms of taking the ESD principles on your phone. So yeah, well done to our Power App.
Thank you so much, Antonella. I'm so excited that you're part of it and supporting the vision, and good luck with everything that you're doing. And thank you to our listeners and our guest, Antonella Spatola. We would love to hear from our listeners of the Change the Culture podcast. You can email me at annie.orenstein@mypwr.co.il, or pop over to the Change the Culture Facebook group and share your thoughts, questions, and success stories with us. Catch up on the last season of Change the Culture by visiting our website, mypower.co.il/podcast, or on Spotify, YouTube, and Alexa. We want you to be part of the conversation and part of the solution. So stay tuned for the next Change the Culture podcast. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Antonella.
Thank you for having me, Annie.